So we're gonna open our beehives.
Uh-huh.
We put mite strips in a couple of weeks ago to treat for varroa mites. And now we have to take the mite strips out, and we're going to take the honey supers off the top of the hive. The summer's pretty much over. It's getting cold, and I think they're as full as they're gonna get. So that's what we're doing.
So what you got there?
This is recycled shredded paper from our office, and we're putting it in the smoker. This stuff, at least what I have found, seems to smoke very well with minimal care while it's working. So,
Are your bees gonna be angry?
hopefully not too angry. So it's still cool outside. It's not hot. It's probably about close to 60 degrees. So the morning times, usually they're not too aggressive. If we wait until, you know, it's 80 degrees in the middle of the day or something like that, then they're not really very happy. Get this lit and going good. This pumps air into the bottom of the smoker so that it feeds the embers in there. The smoke calms the bees a little bit, and it makes them think that there's an actual fire. So what they do is they go into the comb and fill their honey bellies with as much honey as they can to save it from the fire. And then, of course, just like after eating Thanksgiving dinner, everybody's really drowsy and not exactly excited about doing a whole lot.
How many bees do you think are like in all of these hives?
I think the average beehive has between 20 and 40,000 bees.
Wow. So you got between 60 and 120,000 bees right here?
Very possible.
Wow.
I haven't counted them, so I'm not quite sure. They don't sit still long enough to get counted. So
That was enough smoke for the entire hive?
it just smokes on the inside. I mean, it gets in and then filters up through. So now I smoke down in through the top. All right. So we're not going to do a whole lot other than grab the strips, the mite strips out of here. So
How often do you got to use mite strips?
A couple of times this summer. The strips are in between the two boxes, and what they do is they're coated with I want to say like formic acid, but it's probably not the right term. But they permeate the hive, and they put fumes in the hive, and what it does is it kills the mites that are living on the bees, and mite eggs that are inside the cells with the larvae. But this looks pretty good. Lots of bees in there. If you look down in, you can see the combs are full, which is good. And then the same thing for the top box.
It looks like they're getting angrier right now. Huh?
Yeah, you can hear the sound of their buzzing. They're getting a little more agitated. So we're gonna put this back on. So this one, you want to make sure this has an entrance in the back. This is kind of for airflow. And if for any reason the bees need to get in and out, they can come up here and one at a time out through the little back. That helps airflow through so it doesn't get too hot inside the hive or too humid. In the wintertime, the bees, as long as they're healthy, can regulate the temperature inside. But like any other thing that breathes in and out, you know, when they breathe out, there's moisture.
Right.
And so we want to be able to regulate the humidity and the moisture inside the hive. If it gets wet inside the hive, then the bees can't keep themselves warm, and then that's when they die. When I'm ready to put them up for winter, I have sleeves that go on the outside of the box to kind of insulate, and I have a special moisture absorbent board that will go on top of this and inside the outer cover. So when the moisture condenses on the top of the hive, it'll be absorbed by that board instead of dripping back down in. Let's take a look and see what's in. This is the honey super. We're just taking them out one frame at a time. So that's only about half full, but I think that's about as full as it's gonna get. I was watching the bees yesterday when it warmed up a little bit, and none of the bees coming in had any pollen on them. So I think we're pretty much done for the season. It's a little better. This side too, it's got a little on there. The bees really don't want to.
Why?
Because if they sting you, they die. So what happens is the stinger has barbs on it, and it catches in your skin or clothes or whatever. And then when the bee pulls away, it pulls out of their body and leaves the venom sac attached to the stinger. By doing that, causes catastrophic damage to their bodies and they die. So, a bee can only sting once. That's all it's got. Whereas like a wasp or a hornet has a smooth stinger and they can sting you over and over again. Doesn't look like there's really anything left in these other frames. So let's take this box off. This is the queen excluder. We put this in between the hive proper and the honey super so that the worker bees can come through and build, but the queen cannot come through and lay eggs. So she stays in the bottom part of the box. This is the bees' property in here. And so the queen can go wherever she wants in there and lay eggs. Oh man, that's heavy. That is full of honey. I think it probably weighs about 50 or 60 pounds. This darker honeycomb is where there has been brood in there through a couple of cycles. The propolis and all the little bit that's left from the larvae growing stains that wax. But that looks good. It looks full of bees. We can see the honeycomb is all built up and it's all capped off with honey. Same thing in this box. So we know these bees are going to have enough food to last through the winter. And that is why this is theirs. We do not touch what's inside these boxes.
So how do they know which hive is theirs?
First, they use location from the sun. Normally when they come out in the morning, they'll come out and fly around and kind of orient where they're at. And then they can fly off and they can always make it back. If there's multiple hives like this, they will also use smell. Each queen has its own specific smell. And they smell like their queen. They transmit a lot of that smell by touch. So all the bees in there all smell the same as the queen. And so if a bee goes to a wrong hive, those bees can smell it and know that it's wrong and kick it out. You can see these bees on the top. Usually when we open it, they got their little butts sticking up in the air. That's kind of an alarm signal. Oh, no. So we do sometimes have a casualty or two when we're taking the boxes apart and putting them back together. The empty ones we'll just leave in, and then when it's time to put the box back on next summer, we'll just put them on.
And
some of
does
them,
the smell matter in that case?
No, I think by that time it'll be fine. As long as it's not full of bees, the bees that are in that hive will take it over. See, this one is all drawn out comb. The comb's all drawn out, but it's not very full. You can see the glistening honey in there is the only parts that's been even started to be filled. But anything that has honey in it, we don't want to leave out because it will attract predators like wasps. Normally what we'll do is if we have stuff like this in the middle of the winter when it's really frozen, we'll put it outside for, you know, like in a bag for 3 or 4 days. And that really hard freeze will kill any parasites or anything that's in there. So we don't have to worry about, you know, any weird bugs growing in it over the winter, and then we put it back on top of our hive. A regular worker bee, like in the summertime, lasts about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And they go through all of the jobs in the hive, depending on their age. So when they emerge from the comb, they become like nurse bees that help feed the larvae. help clean the hive. Then they become what's called the guard bees that are kind of at the front and protect the hive from intruders or anything like that. And then when you get a little bit older, they become foragers, which are the bees that go out and collect pollen and nectar. And they're forager bees until they drop dead of exhaustion, basically. Right about now, the queen is making what we call winter bees. They last about 6 months. So all the way through the whole winter until the hive starts pulling in pollen again, which stimulates the queen to start laying again, and then she lays summer bees. See, in the wintertime, the bees don't leave their hive. The physiology of the bee is their wings, not just run by muscles, it's a lot of pneumatic action, just like most insects. That's why when you see a spider and it dies and its legs go like this, because it's not pumping that fluid enough to keep its legs out. But below 60 degrees, the bees have a hard time flying. So they stay inside and they vibrate against each other to keep the hive warm. But occasionally, you'll get a day that it's warm enough for them to go outside, and they hold all of their wastes. They can hold it for months. And when it's time, when it comes and it's a little bit warm, everybody goes outside and poops and goes right back in. Bees are very, very clean. They're very hygienic. They don't want dead bees. They don't want wastes or anything like that inside their hives.
So what do they do with the dead bees?
They drag them out to the entrance. And if it's warm enough, they drag them off. If not, they just leave them in the entrance. Because nobody's going in or out anyways. In the springtime, there'll be a little pile of dead bees along the front of the hive. Like a full box like this, let's say probably weighs about 60 pounds. So, and that's probably like 58 pounds of honey. These guys will have roughly 100 pounds of honey to keep them through the winter time. When it starts getting cooler outside, when the new bees hatch, the queen won't lay eggs and they'll fill those cells full of honey. So that when wintertime starts, all the bees that are going to be in this hive have already hatched and they've stored as much food as possible.